Biggest mistake is that speakers think if I just work on getting better and better and better, the rest of it will take care of itself. And I say all the time, you don't have to be great at this business. You got to be good. I've seen speakers who are good speakers with great content, and I've seen reasonable speakers who had great marketing. But I think, and not that the presentation is unimportant, it's very important, but it's not the most important. This is a business. Think about if you were starting any business, what would be the most important parts?
Hey there, it's Jacqueline Brooker, host of Speaker Driven Business Podcast, and I'm just dropping in to briefly introduce the third of our guests in the Guest Expert series for Speaker Driven Business. First of all, we had Carmine Gallo very early in the series. We've recently heard from Elizabeth McCormick, and now we get to hear from David Avrin. Now, David Avrin is actually one of the most in-demand customer experience speakers and consultants in the world today. His insights have been featured on thousands of media outlets around the world, and he is the author of 7 books, including the current Amazon bestseller, Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With. Now, not only does he have great books and great titles, and not only is he in demand around the world for his speaking, David has an incredibly generous heart for those in the world that choose to make speaking their thing. I've come across David several times and actually was blown away by his main stage delivery at NSA Influencer Conference in 2024. I reached out to David to see if he would be kind enough to actually come on the episode with the change and the shift that we've made. And not only did he show up, but he showed up and played all out. And we do have some exclusive content for our Speak More Collective program. But even if all you get to listen to is the time that we have together in this part of the podcast, you are going to walk away richer for the experience with a deeper understanding of exactly what you need to do to get that cut through and that breakthrough that you are genuinely craving. Sit down, grab a cup of tea, strap in, because this is a great conversation. Welcome back to the next edition of the Speaker Driven Business Podcast. And I am literally over the moon today to welcome our guest, David Avrin, CSP, Global Speaking Fellow, keynote speaker, world traveler. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you so much. It was such a treat to meet you at the NSA USA Influence Conference this last summer. I'll ask everybody to forgive a little bit of a hoarse voice. Been speaking a lot and just coming off a little bit of a cough, but no, it's great to be here. Let's talk speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to speak about, especially with others. I wanted to actually go straight to in Denver. You we'll talk about what you're known about in a moment, but you were actually I really resonate with how you showed up at that event, the content that you gave us. You're a main stage speaker, and the content that you gave us. Can you walk us through a little bit about why you actually did something a little bit different and what it was that you delivered in that particular session?
Sure. My regular subject is customer experience. I work with businesses. I help them become ridiculously easy to do business with. So that's the main subject. But I was really honored to be asked to speak on the main stage for NSA. And I've spoken for 10 of the international chapters, 4 of them twice, and twice for the global speak. So I do it because I love talking and sharing with my colleagues. We learn from each other, right? But this was a really unique opportunity for my own home association. 25 years in this business, I had never actually spoken for my own association, at least on the main stage. And so when they asked me, I said, I'm honored, but I don't want to talk about my regular subject. I don't want to showcase my keynote. And they said, really, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to help our colleagues feed their families. I want to call out some of the nonsense that is too often shared with the best of intentions that costs people their livelihoods, because most speakers starve. Speakers who have great messages, great content, great skills, but they don't understand the business part of it. And so they said, yes, please. I said, are you sure? Because I'm going to say what needs to be said, and I'm going to do it with humor, but I really want to help us. I mean, why are we not growing by 1,000 members a year? Because probably 10,000 people get into this profession every year, but most of them don't survive 18 months to 2 years because they just don't have the business coming in. And they said yes. And so my intention on stage was, in a loving way, to speak to our friends and colleagues and say, let's say the truth that too many people don't, but in a way that will help, not because I want to get up there and rant. And the reality is, we have a really interesting profession. Most people get into this business because they are encouraged by somebody who has no idea what this business is. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You should be a speaker. The way you tell stories, you're like a great storyteller. And then when you were climbing that mountain and you fell in the crevasse and you saved that person and then you lost your leg, and then you could inspire people. And yeah, they could, but that's not what we get hired for. And so I put a little section at the beginning that was a little irreverent. I said, let's do this little game show. And it was like, I don't know, I had the music and everything. It was a little game show. It was like meeting planner, truth or nonsense. And I had the audience shout out. I'll give them a prompt. They had to shout out if it's truth or if it's nonsense. And the things that we're told again and again, like the world needs to hear your story. It's nonsense. The world doesn't need to hear.
I'm laughing because I'm such an advocate of that.
Yeah, but the world needs to feed their families. They need to increase their sales and develop their leaders and understand AI. Now, that said, your story may be pivotal to communicate that. But understand, nobody's writing you a check for you to live your dream of changing people's lives. Nobody's writing you a check for you to have a cathartic experience and exercise your demons. The stage is not your therapy. They're being hired to solve their problems. Now, we do that through story. We do that through, but when we have a different mindset, we have a different approach to promoting our business, to getting hired. When I look at people's websites, and your website has one job, it's to get them interested enough to talk to you or interested enough to click on your video, right? So anyway, long story short, I called out a lot of the nonsense about, here's the part that, and you'll remember this for those who are going to have a private conversation here, friends. In the 2 days before I spoke, some of the things that I was going to talk about, they did on the main stage. And I'm like, oh, how do I do this without insulting my friends? Because if I hear one more time, Jacqueline, I'm going to slash my wrists. If I hear one more time, if you make a difference in the life of just one person, it's all worth it. And I said out loud, if you make a difference in the life of just one person, you are a terrible speaker.
I rant about this, and I shouldn't rant, but I really, like, you're letting yourself off the hook, right?
Yeah,
if you want to make a difference to one person,
people,
job done.
It makes people feel good. Listen, you've inspired one person. You're fired. You're terrible at this. Listen, you have 650 people in the audience who got nothing, but that one person, you're never going to get hired. And here's the point. We touch and make a difference in the lives of thousands, right? So we have to stop saying silly things. And start talking about why do we get hired. And so I had whole sections on here's why meeting planners hire. So we could talk about all of that. But anyway, going back, that was the gist of the presentation. I got tired of watching brilliant colleagues leave the profession for no other reason than they just didn't know how to get gigs. And I made sort of a joke about it. And I said, people are like, I took a 3-day boot camp on how to use hand gestures and I can't get the phone to ring. I'm like, first of all, don't take 3-day boot camps on hand gestures. Nobody cares. And don't wait for the phone to ring.
Yeah, I really, the session that you ran really resonated, and probably because I felt like somebody who is at the global speaking level was actually reinforcing everything I say. And we had a client, so we run an incentive each year. We take one of our clients to influence. And so I had one of my emerging speaker clients beside me, and she looked at me, she goes, oh my goodness, he's saying what you're saying. I'm like, well, maybe someone will listen now. Yeah, because we're right. When it comes to building businesses, and I really want to come back to this ridiculously easy to do business with, but for speakers, what is the big mistake you see them making? Like, there was a lot of things that you ran through, but in this emerging stage, and I'm really passionate as well, because I think people make a decision to leave this business, that this business is not for them simply because they don't understand how to sell and how to be easy to buy.
100% agree.
So I think I always say you're making a decision with the wrong data points. So what are these mistakes? And maybe go to one or two of them. And what can people do to change the game?
The biggest mistake by far is being inadvertently passive. They think it's the old line that, and I'm old, and I remember when they said, if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door, right? It means if you're just really good, the world will discover you. No, you'll be the best kept secret. And a little irreverent line. I said, doing business without promotion is like winking at somebody in the dark. You know what you're doing, but nobody else does. Or here's a worse one, is doing business without a business plan to promote it is like peeing in your pants. It'll give you a warm feeling for a minute, but it's not going to do you much good in the long run. Biggest mistake is that speakers think if I just work on getting better and better and better, the rest of it will take care of itself. And I say all the time, you don't have to be great at this business. You got to be good. I've seen speakers who are good speakers with great content, and I've seen reasonable speakers who had great marketing. But I think, and not that the presentation is unimportant, it's very important, but it's not the most important. This is a business. Think about if you were starting any business, what would be the most important parts? The fundamentals of business, right? It's marketing, it's sales, it's cash flow, it's delivering for your clients. This would be akin to somebody who's developing a new software and they spend 99% of their time tweaking the software, right? So it's important, but at some point you got to sell it to somebody and the phone doesn't ring. And people talk about getting on the, if I can get on the speaking circuit, you and I both know there is no circuit.
No, there's no circuit. And also, even if there was, you'd have to sell yourself to get on it.
Right. But people shy away. Oh, it's sales. No, you can't be anonymous in this business. If people don't know who you are, they can't buy what you got. So back to your question, the biggest mistake is they're not selling and promoting. And they think if they just get better and better and they take 14 boot camps on their keynote, that the world will discover them. And the phone's not going to ring. It can, but that's an investment. I talk to newer speakers as well. I said, don't compare your chapter 2 to my chapter 15, right? Or in my case, chapter 25. I've been doing this for a long time. But here's the thing that surprises people, because we're very fortunate. I've got a full team. I didn't for the first 10 years. It was just me, but we've built. We do very well, and I speak all over the world, 28 countries. Half of my gigs, Jacqueline, come from organizations who had no idea who I was until we reached out to them, until we pitched them. Half.
This one of the things that really got my attention, because when you were actually speaking at Stage of Influence, because I believe one of my things that I say to all of our clients is if you want inbound, you have to get outbound, right? Outbound comes first. And so if you're looking for the phone to ring, well, first of all, you need to pick up and use the phone. What really got my attention is I know that you've built and you now have a team, but you actually have a pitch team basically who are doing outreach all the time. And you just said how many gigs come from that. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how it exists? Understanding this is your chapter 25, but I want to show what's possible.
But I'm more than happy to share. And I think that's the nature of our business. I think we're all competitors to an extent, but it's the most loving, sharing community. And I want to play my part of it. That was my intention with the main stage session at NSA. I'm happy to share how we do what we do, because I don't take for granted that somebody's going to know who I am. I can't even be considered for unless they know who I am. So our process is this, and I do have staff in the office and I have somebody virtual overseas as well, but we prospect. And so we have a system where and let me clarify, and I'll repeat it again. We do not automate anything. Now, if you want to use AI to find prospects, but anybody who gets a list and they blast the list is the most foolhardy approach, because 99.9% will ignore it because it's clearly just a broadcast pitch. There might have been 5% of those who could have hired you, but you just blew that relationship because you sent them something automated. So we personalize everything. So we'll have, I've got a young woman over in the Philippines, and she goes through association lists, mostly in America, but I do a lot of work internationally, and she'll see the American Association of Microphone Manufacturers. And we'll look them up. And the nice thing about associations, right, two basic audiences. I mean, there's healthcare and government, but you've got private companies and you have associations. The benefit of the association is they broadcast when their meetings are. It's on their website.
Yes, they do.
The company doesn't. If company's having, Microsoft doesn't say when their sales meeting is, but the associations do. So we look them up. We say, okay, they've got a meeting coming up in January. We look at who were the speakers last year. Who do they have currently booked? So we get a sense if all their speakers are industry people, they probably don't pay, right? If there's a few names that you and I might recognize and we have a good idea where the fee level is, that might be a good opportunity, right? Jim Pancero, NSA member, has a great line. He says, you pick your competition, you choose your fee. If that's who you want to go against, that's what you charge, right? Make sure you deliver it. So we'll find the opportunity and then we'll put it in our CRM system. We use SpeakerFlow. And so here's the event. Here's when it is. We try and find the contact information. All of that goes into the CRM. Here's the key. And this is what most speakers get wrong. And I'm going to share it, and I'm going to lose business to somebody who's going to beat me out for a gig. And that's okay. Is when you pitch them is pivotal. If, as we're recording this right now, we are mid-late October. Okay. If the event is coming up in January, we're not pitching them. They already have their speakers.
No, you're just introducing and connecting.
Yeah. So what they're going to say is, we'll keep you on file. They're not going to keep me on file. They're up to their eyeballs in details trying to put on their event. So here's the strategy. This make you six figures. Everybody listening, you put in your CRM, you put a task that will pop up on your screen, pitch the American microphone manufacturers 30 days after the end of their conference, because they've had a chance to get their feedback, their breathing in. Now they got to start thinking about next year. The good news is you're the first one in. So if we pitch them in August, they have somebody, we're already through the process. We might have something. People are pitching all the time, and most of them are wasted. So we're prospecting all the time, but we're pitching strategically. We only pitch 30, sometimes 60 days after the end of their last conference. It has been significantly positive for us. Now, when I say pitch, we send an introductory email and we pitch a specific event. And now we have some templates, but we always customize. I work with David Avrin. He's one of the top customer experience speakers. I think he would be a great fit for your American Microphone Manufacturing Conference coming up in Las Vegas in January of 2026. If you want to skip the rest of this email, just click on this link to watch his preview video. You'll see in 6 minutes why he's one of the top whatever, right? And then we go on, and if they want to keep reading, we'll tell a little bit more about my keynote and everything else. I've got one goal. I want them to click that video. If they click that video, I got a pretty good shot at getting the gig. It's a good video. I've been doing this for a long time. If they don't click it, I don't really have any chance. If I pitch them at the wrong time, they're not clicking it. And so we're able to track. We track how many people open the email, and you can do it through a good CRM where you track how many people open it, how many people click. So the point is we're prospecting all the time. We're pouring through lists, what events, what industry. Now we're also pitching organizations that would be a fit for me, right? I'm a business speaker, so somebody has to be in business. So the International Association of Operating Room Nurses, their customers are asleep with open wounds. It's not a prospect for me. They're not going to hire me. So we also stack the deck that we pitch organizations who would be a good fit. That's outbound, right? Now, of course, we have a system. We pitch them. We put another task for 2 weeks. If they don't respond, we pitch them again, a second email 2 weeks later. We tend to get double the response for our second email as we do for our first. And of course, if they respond in the meantime with anything positive, we cancel the second one, and then we really go to work, right? Then we go to work.
I really love that pitch window. I think that's actually the missing piece. And thank you for sharing that, because that is a missing piece. And that also is why people are getting exhausted, because even when they're doing the prospecting, the pitching is actually, they're not getting a response. So I really love that. That's invaluable. So that's now. What about David in the first 10 years? How did David go about building his business and pitching himself?
Dave learned a lot. Well, back in the day, when we left, our business closed, right? We didn't have Wi-Fi on airplanes, not like it's very good today anyway, but we would leave the office for a gig and our business closed until we got back. Nobody wants to leave messages. And so people would start putting contact forms on their websites. They still do. I speak to speaker organizations. I say, I want to thank every one of you who has a contact form on your website, because you put my kids through university, because you're waiting while they're waiting for you to get the contact form and respond. I have my phone number. I have phone numbers for every one of my team on my website. Oh my gosh, we are, because we're first. So by the time they respond, I've already sent over a contract. I already talked to the client. I was up last 4 nights in a row. I was up from 1 until 3 a.m. because I've got clients in India and the Middle East, and I am ridiculously easy to do business with. But I respond faster than anyone, and so I get the gig because this feeds my family. We're empty nesters. We got 5 kids, grown and gone. Doesn't mean they're off the payroll, but at least they're out of the house. But I'm paid for 5 American universities and 3 staff. I answer the phone. Now, to be clear, I have a contact form, but I give them but if they want to call direct, we've got everybody's phone number. Now, here's the pushback I get with them. Well, don't you have any life balance? I'm like, come on, people. No, but they're not calling every day.
No, they're not. This is what actually really gets my thing. Like, but what if I do this and I can't keep up with demand? I'm like, that's a great problem to have, and we'll deal with it when you get there.
You and I have both heard that from newer speakers. I don't want it where I'm going to listen. God forbid you have such a problem. A fraction of a fraction will ever have that. And then you have the power to use the most powerful word in the English language. And that word is no, right? Or you turn them down or you raise your fee. I mean, you want a good indication. If 100% of the people you're talking to have no problem with your fee, you're not charging enough. Yeah, 25%. I always say if nobody's saying no, raise your fee 50%. And the formula should be 25% of the people who are interested in you, you're having conversation, can't afford you. It's 25%. Then you're probably priced just right. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't say yes sometimes. If I got nothing else and somebody's got X, we're not supposed to talk specific numbers, but they have X dollars, it's not my normal fee, and I got nothing else going on, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye.
Yeah. I always say when we've got white space, let's fill it. Don't be precious. If there's white space in your calendar.
And there's other things we can say. That's like, I've trained my assistant well, and she'll say, let's see what else we can do to bolster this, to make it. She'll say, like, listen, I really want Dave to do this. I think you really love him. What else can I offer him? Well, tell me more about the resort. They're like, right, you know all this. And so we'll do that with, I have a certain fee for international overwater. We had an offer in the, for a conference in the Cayman Islands. That's awesome. It wasn't my normal fee, but it was pretty good. My assistant, she got a companion fare, 4 extra nights in the hotel. Yes.
In the Cayman Islands, we're going.
In the Cayman Islands to go speak for an hour, right? So there's a lot of ways to do this, but we just can't be passive. So we have a process. So once again, it's not automated, and we do them one at a time. Does it take a lot of time? Yes. And it's worth it. And
I was just going to say, it takes a lot of time and it's worth it. Just as we're getting on the call, you're talking about what's happening for you between now and the end of the year. The volume at which you speak at, could we actually just give some insight to what your year looks like from a volume perspective, not the fees, but, the kind of amount of gigs you do, what this rest of this year looks like, so people can understand, yes, it takes a lot of time, but how worth it this is.
Yeah. And I hesitate because you don't want to sound boastful, because it's just hard. Standing on stage isn't hard. Because, well, let me take back, and then I'll talk to you about my year. One of my primary messages when I spoke for NSA in the United States was that, to be clear, that speaking is not a business. It's not. Getting the gig is the business.
100%.
Speaking is the performance. We love that. We do that. We would do that for free. They're paying for us to leave our families and to fly on airplanes and to deal with travel disruption. That's the horrible part. But the performance is awesome. So I have a really arduous final rest of the year. In the last 6 weeks of this year, I leave next week. I go Paris, Malta, Dubai, London, Vienna. I come back to America for 2 presentations, and then we have Thanksgiving. And then I leave for a week in India, presentations, and then 8 days in Dubai. And that's just before Christmas. Now, it's not always like that. And to be clear, because I'm 6'3", travel is horrible. But like I said before, it's worth it. The travel is the price we pay for the destination. We have a job where people clap for us at the end of the day. How many people have that? People stand in line to get a signed book or take a picture. It's surreal. I'm at home and my wife's like, hey, Mr. Big Deal, go take out the trash, right? But I would take my kids. When they were younger, I would be able to take them on special daddy trips or whatever. And if I had to do something international, what a great opportunity. But I remember my son said to me once, he was probably 7, or maybe he was 8 or 9. And he said, Dad, they think you're famous. He says, you're just my dad, right? It's a surreal life. You can't take the accolades seriously, but it's hard, but it's worth it, right? Traveling on airplanes for 17 hours or 23 hours. I did Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia last year. It was 37 hours to get there, 33 hours back for a 1-hour presentation. I remember people say to me, my mentor in all of this was a guy named Eric Chester, Hall of Fame speaker, amazing. And I remember saying to him 26 years ago, and you'll laugh at this because you hear it all the time. People go, wait, you make how much money just to talk for an hour? And my answer today is what his answer was to me. And I say, yeah, that's true, but I don't do it every hour. And I might work 60 hours a week to get that gig.
Yeah, one of our emerging speakers just did her first 60-minute keynote, and her biggest comment to me afterwards, it was amazing. But her biggest comment afterwards was, I didn't realize it would be so exhausting. By the time I got there, was completely on for 60 minutes and then got home. She's like, I actually had no idea. And she's putting her fees up because she's like, I suddenly realized that, yeah, so this is the biggest surprise for most people. When you mentioned a mentor just then, and if we think back to that early stages of David's career, what's the most surprising bit of advice that you got that really made a difference for you? The thing that you kind of went, what? Say what now? And then it made a difference.
Wow, that's a great question. I think the biggest surprising thing about the industry was pricing, because when you're first, and for emerging speakers, the first time that you say a big number is really hard to say, because in your mind, you're saying, nobody's worth that for an hour. And you're right, because they're not paying for the hour. They're paying for a lifetime of experience. They're paying for your preparation. They're paying for your travel. They're paying for the value that you deliver to them. Get it out of your mind that you are charging for an hour. You're not. The biggest lesson is you have to charge enough to be credible to the client. You will get twice as much business at $7,000 than you will ever get at $3,000. You'll get 5 times more business at $7,000 than you will charging $3,000, because it's a perception of quality. If somebody's only charging, and I'm not talking trainers, which is a whole nother subject. They can be very resentful because they're presenting great content. They sometimes resentful that we get paid more for an hour than they get paid all day. It's just the nature of the business. Speakers get more than trainers, and there's a lot of, but if you're a professional speaker and you're charging $3,000, which may be for a local gig, but you're just not going to get hired because they're just going to think you're not very good. So that was the biggest surprise, is you have to be at a certain level. And for whatever market you're in, there is a number. Once again, Jim Pancero had the great one. He says, you choose your fee and you choose your competition. If you say, I'm going to charge this number, find out everybody else that charges that number, that's who you're competing against. I had an opportunity today, one of the speakers bureaus called, and they wanted a very big name speaker. I won't say who it is. And that person wasn't available. I had to give him that number. And I'll be honest, between you and I, if I get it, it'll be the highest paid gig I've ever gotten. But if I charged any other number, they would think, well, that's not good enough. Let's find a celebrity. And so we already know they want that level. This is what they expect to pay. If I charge less, it doesn't give me a competitive advantage. It makes me dismissible.
That's the flick that I love. It does not give you a competitive advantage. It makes you dismissible. And that's, I think, especially the early stage speakers, it's one of the biggest things that they need to land. You talked about that. If you get that, it'll be your biggest gig to date. Thinking back to getting your first big gigs monetarily, thinking back to landing your first big gig, whether that was the size of the stage or the thing, what would you say to emerging speakers about landing that first big one?
Boy, this is a tough one, because we're in a difficult market right now. It used to be find any ways to get reps. Find the groups in your local area that meet weekly or monthly, the business networking groups, the Rotary groups, the chambers of commerce. Get your reps. Get your experience doing it over and over again. And then you have to get footage. For an organization to invest in you over the choices, they have to see you do what you do. So the hardest part at the beginning is you have to have some footage, right? Some video for them to see, but then it's the chicken or the egg. How do I get footage if I can't get a gig? But how do I get a gig? Yes, that is the dilemma.
Yes.
You get that. But, well, there's a couple of strategies. Do you want me to go into that? By how to get footage? Because early footage is really important, because they don't want to take a chance. Meeting planners are very, very risk averse. They may have one meeting a year, one meeting a month, and it can't be bad. So they're not going to hire you if they can't see you do what you do. So the dilemma is, how do you get footage? How do you get video? Speak to your chamber of commerce, say, I'll come speak to you. And they say, well, we don't compensate our speakers. And I'll say, well, I'll do it if you'll have it professionally recorded. And so I did that early in my career. And so they said, oh, we have a member who's got a videography company, but they did a 3-camera shoot. It was awesome. So they have to be able to see something. It will get better. You'll always update it. We're always updating our videos, but there's also a way to get it that's faking it, but there's nothing unethical. Find wherever you live, see if there's like a mega church, a mega venue. Call them up and say, can I get your audiovisual department? And they'll switch you over there and say, is there any day of the week where nothing's going on in the main sanctuary? And they'll say, well, there's nothing on Tuesdays, whatever. Great. Say, Can I ask you a question? Say, I'm a professional speaker. I'm trying to get some footage. If I donate $500 to your youth group or to your missions program, can I get 1 hour on the stage? And maybe pay an extra $50 to a high school kid to run camera too. And you'll be surprised that they'll say yes, because you're giving them something. I'll donate. Maybe it's if you're a member of that church, have them shoot that where you can see the big stage. You can't see the audience. Go there and do 15 minutes of great stuff, right? Don't worry about the beginning. Just 15 minutes of great content. Say cut, go backstage, change clothes, close the curtains, move the cameras, change the lighting, and do 15 more minutes. And then say cut, and then go change clothes, put it at a different angle, and all of a sudden you're at a different venue. Put different plants on the stage and do 15 more minutes. Now you look like, and I will submit, somebody can disagree, and I don't care. It's not unethical because they want to see you speak. Can you speak?
That's the thing.
Right.
That's the thing.
It doesn't have to be representative. So there's a way to do it. Now, one of the other mistakes, and I think people sell themselves short, is I'll talk to emerging speakers and they'll say, I have some footage from last couple. The lighting wasn't great, the sound. And I always say earlier in your career, the footage doesn't have to be great. You have to be great on it. If you're killing it, but the sound isn't great, they don't care. They just want to avoid making a bad decision, right? They just have to check that box. Okay, this person is good. So don't throw away or diminish the importance of mediocre footage earlier in your career. Later on, you can't use any of that, right? So record everything. Try not to record things handheld. Just put it on a tripod or something, but get reps early and get footage of everything. Because you can review it to see how you did, but then you've got something for a meeting planner to see. This is all very much that first year in the business kind of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where a lot of our audience is sitting. David, with regards to being so easy, ridiculously easy to do business with, which is the book, those who are watching this on YouTube rather than on Spotify, that is the book. That is a premise that I live and die by. We actually need to be easy to be found, easy to do business with, easy to be bought, easy to work with. What is the evolution that's actually landed you there? Because it's customer experience is actually your byline. Now we've got this. What's the lens that you're coming out with this? And then the second question to that is, what can speakers take away from what you know about being ridiculously easy?
Yeah, well, I'll combine the two because I think it translates into, we're running a business. And if you're difficult to reach, you're not going to be successful in this business, especially with bureaus. And we can talk about bureaus because newer speakers think, I just need an agent. I need to get on with the bureau. They're not looking for business for you. They're taking incoming calls and they're hiring Peter Sheehan, right? So bureaus are not the answer. I do very little through bureaus, but we have very successful business. So ridiculously easy means if they're in a point where they're inquiring or you reached out, they're taking that. Oftentimes whoever answers the phone first gets the gig. I mean, if they find, it's like when people say, oh, I finally found my keys. It was in the last place I looked. Of course it's the last place. Once you find it, you're not looking anymore. And so we have a competitive advantage is that we are so responsive. And sometimes we'll go, wow, I didn't expect you to call. I check my email in the middle of the night. You don't have to do that. If you don't want to, I do. Because I want to be the first to respond. I had an inquiry from India, 1:00 in the morning. I just got up and went to the bathroom. I went and looked at my phone. I scheduled a call for 6:30 this morning and I booked a gig. They're not looking for anybody else now because I responded faster. So ridiculously easy is sometimes speakers, the industry has a reputation of having some prima donnas. I don't think there's very many. I think most of us are not those people. I don't think this industry attracts that. Some celebrities maybe, but it's showing up early. If you got a gig, I always go to the cocktail reception the night before. I try and stay for the dinner if I can, because that's prospecting time. The night before the gig, nobody knows who you are. You're on site. You're getting little tidbits. You might tweak your slide deck. But after you get done speaking, everybody wants to talk to you. If you have an audience full of people who might be able to hire you, don't go jump on an airplane. Stick around, right? So ridiculously easy just means exactly that. I mean, that's my brand, but we try to personify that in everything. We're very easy to reach. If a bureau needs an answer for their client and they have to email you or fill out your contact form, and wait till the next day, they're going to stop trying you because they want to be able to respond quickly. And I want to make my partners heroes for choosing me or recommending me.
Yeah. David, as we wrap out the podcast this morning, I would love to know, and this is a challenge almost, in one sentence, what is the piece of wisdom that you just wish that every emerging speaker understood?
Speaking is not a business. Getting the gig is the business you're in.
Love that. I love that. And for the audience listening along who know me a little better, that goes perfectly with speaking is your product, not your business. Thank you so much, David Avrin. It's been an absolute pleasure to have the conversation. Can't wait to actually do more with you and more conversations over time.
What a treat. Thank you so much.